Good evening and welcome to Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz Entertainment in Canada around the world. My name is Tahir Qureshi. I'm a fellow of Royal Institute of Canada, broker of record for City Pro Realty Inc. brokerage. Tonight we pick up a topic, challenges in selling tenanted property. We also talk about market conditions, regulatory changes, increased interest rate and its impact on home buyers as well as the seller who are maintaining a property based on line of credit or variable mortgage and other challenges that is affecting buyer and sellers. So let's talk about the challenges in selling a tenanted property. First of all, when you are reaching out as a realtor, reaching out to seller to list a property or seller reach out to you to list a property, you have to remember that under Residential Tenancy Act, we as a seller representative have obligation to accommodate the appointment and convenience for the tenanted property. You got to meet with a tenant along with your seller to set up some protocol how to sell, how to get the appointment, show the property, and maintain the appointments and follow up, and also not to inconvenience the tenant. Obviously, we cannot do open houses. What happened is that sometime a buyer have to put an offer to buy a property subject to sale of their home. If their house is not sold, or that house that is not sold is tenanted, there are some challenges. Reason is that the market prices of the housing has escalated. So is the carrying cost of an existing house. So tenants know that if they leave the house or when the property is sold, they're going to end up paying more rent, moving to a different location. So there are a couple of challenges that you have to do. First of all, you want to make sure that your tenant allows you to show the property based on the time frame that is agreed between the parties. A good thing about the broker bay is you can set up those and block those timing when the tenant doesn't want you to visit the property. So building a good rapport with the tenant is very important for a real estate professional, because he or she, if refuse to cooperate with you, you're in big trouble. Most important thing for any realtors who are working with you as a buying and selling is to find out the exact content of the lease. You have two types of leases. One, we do lease agreement using URIA, Kuria, or TREB forms. The other one is a residential tenancy agreement issued by the Ontario government that you have to share a copy with the tribunal. So that agreement defines the terms and conditions. When can you ask the vacant position of the property? Also, how long this residential tenancy agreement will last? What is the termination date? Now, in normal terms, if you are month to month, and there are two things very important. First, the buyer will cooperate with you if your buyer of your property will assume the tenant. Okay? So you have to figure that out and make sure you disclose that on MLS. Second thing is, if it's a month to month and you have a buyer who wants to buy a property and take a vacant position, you need to ask the buyer to include a clause in Schedule A of the Agreement of Purchase and Sale that the property is required by the buyer for personal use as a principal residence. Therefore, we request the seller to give notice to the tenant in accordance with Residential Tenancy Act to give vacant possession by giving 60-day advance notice. Depending on the cooperation relationship, the seller may end up giving a 1-month rent for relocation allowance. So you need to look at that legislative clause to make sure that you are cooperating, because you want to sell the property and you are cooperating. Difficulty is that if the agreement is existing, that means is a valid contract and you have a significant remaining period. That means seller has no choice but to sell to a buyer who will assume that tenant until that period expires, and then they will take possession. You cannot terminate or move out the tenant and then you want to resell it or renovate or give it to another tenant. You have to give honest statement and it's be a part of agreement of purchase and sale. Therefore, seller will be able to give notification. Now, the challenge that there is that because of high borrowing cost, the current owner who has paid off the property, so he has no mortgage, he or she has no mortgage. So if even though they are on a lower rental, they still are getting money to support their expenses because there is no mortgage except property taxes and maintenance. But if you want to buy the property and you have you have to carry the rental and assume the tenant. So that assume, for example, a property has a potential to be rented for $4,000, but it is currently rented for $3,100. So the buyer who plans to invest in that property will have to pay $900 minimum from his pocket, his or her pocket, to maintain that property. Provided that you still have to pay property tax, you still have to provide the insurance for your property. Therefore, it becomes a challenge because when you have a valid lease, you can't terminate. You have to wait until the lease ends, then you take possession of the property. So I advise you to talk to your lawyer and ask them to review the lease agreement and get their legal opinion about it. You as a real estate professional and also consumer working with a real estate professional, you have to be upfront and disclose all information to your realtors. Because if a buyer buys the property assuming that they're going to have a vacant possession and there was non-disclosure in terms of lease agreement or the term of the lease agreement, there is a challenge. And that will cause sometime failure to close a deal. And then there are consequences if you fail to close the deal. I sold a property in Brampton, it closed in June 1st. We have two tenants in the property, and this was a dual it's a dwelling, a second unit. And the tenant was very cooperative. And our client seller has taken care of their client and built such a good rapport that we were able to sell the property without any issue. And the buyer assumed that tenant because they were in a basement, walkout basement, and they move up on the second floor. So that's why it's very important to have a good relation and also explain your situation. And so get that sympathy from the tenant that this is where you are in that situation because you're trying to sell this because financially it's not possible to maintain that property. So when you have disclosed this information to your real estate professional, you have an idea how the real estate professional will navigate. Other problem is that sometimes the property is tenanted, they are not well taken care of. they are not being painted well, they're not maintained or in an orderly manner, which discourage buyers to give good offer. They will try to see, because they can read through the line, between the line, that something is happening. So if there is a challenge with the tenant, it's going to take a longer. So do not buy a property subject to sale of your house if your property is tenanted, because you're going to be unfair with the seller who you bought the property and you are not able to sell your property. And if you buy a property without conditional sale, you are taking a big risk, especially now when the interest rate is going up. As you know, the quarter point was raised by the Bank of Canada. So now variable, I was looking at my bank statement today, variable, I used to have a 2.45. Today it was 6.95. And most likely, because inflation has not come down the way they predicted or estimated. And inflation, why? Because inflation, cost of buying stuff become more expensive. So your affordability brings you down. Things that you buy for $2, now you're buying for $4. And that's why your value of your dollar, or the money you earn, it's decreased. Therefore, you will less and less qualify. The food, the energy, the car payment, you can name it. Anything you want to buy is expensive. So I recommend you to make some planters in your backyard and grow some vegetation. I am doing it. I designed a couple of planters for my backyard so I can have some tomatoes or cucumber or other things that you don't have to go and buy it. It's expensive. The 5 cucumber can cost you $8. Unbelievable. I have seen the prices because I like cucumber. So this is why it's important when you are dealing with this. You look at, especially the tenant, you look and see how cooperative they are. You can kindly, respectfully ask them to maintain and clean the property for presentation. You can schedule timing to accommodate them, because sometimes the clients work at night, they sleep, the tenants work at night, they sleep during the day. So you have these challenges. And you have to explain to your seller, because these are the challenges we have. Under these circumstances, we're going to navigate through the challenges to sell the property. Best thing would be if someone has the vacant position of the property, or tenant decided to move away because of relocation, then you can sell the property the maximum price, or you can even do the painting, some improvement of the property. Unfortunately, you cannot, because especially when your rent income is less than the carrying cost of the property. Therefore, the landlord will not burden themselves with lots of renovation and maintaining the property. So this is why it's very important, because you don't want to have a situation where the tenant complains about your behavior if you're not working with them. So I highly recommend to look at the lease agreement. Then after understanding lease agreement, get the opinion from the lawyer, and then you have to go to the property and you talk with the tenant. Sometimes the tenant will not allow you to put a key there, because sometimes the tenants are putting more people in the house what they put on the application, and they don't want anyone to come in. That's why they restrict your ability to go and visit them on a frequent basis. So you set up a time with them and to show the property, and make sure they keep the property clean. And then sometimes it's very difficult. Do not put the pictures there unless they consent you, because this is a personal property of the tenant. If the tenant refuses, you can't put there, because they can complain because of privacy law. Also, If you need any help, I think it may not be a good idea to talk to tribunal, residential tenancy board, and talk them and get them some feeling about it. Take your lease agreement, talk to your lawyer, or go there and find out before you start listing the property in the marketplace. Therefore, idea is to avoid any confrontation, create a mishap, also make a smooth transaction so it does not affect the market value of the property, and also encouraging the seller to make sure that there is a cordial relationship between you, tenant, and the seller, and you sell property without any hesitation. But I recommend that if your property is tenanted, I do not recommend that the seller, if the seller wants to relocate or to buy a property, I would wait until your property is sold and then you acquire their property. Because interest rates have gone up, we have talked about the market rates, the average sale price has increased. As you can notice that as compared to May 2022, we are only minus 1.2% from the last May to this May. So it has improved significantly. I think I shared that pricing with you before in our last episode, that in April, our average price based on Toronto Regional Real Estate Board was $1,153,277. Now is $1,196,101. So average price has increased. And if you look at the report that I shared before, from January to May is gradually increased. We have the lowest average price in January was $1,037,562, and now in May we are $1,196,101. We're going to take a short break, and we'll come back and continue our conversation about challenges in selling tenanted property.
हसीन लगना तो सभी चाहते हैं, मगर हुस्न का निखार तभी मुमकिन है जब आपका स्टाइलिस्ट हो एक्सपर्ट एंड क्वालिफाइड। ब्यूटी बार एंड ब्राइडल, ऑल एक्सपर्टीज इन वन पॉइंट। हमारे यहाँ थ्रेडिंग, लेटेस्ट फेशियल ट्रीटमेंट, बेस्ट बॉडी वैक्सिंग, मेकओवर जैसा आप चाहें, जबरदस्त ब्राइडल पैकेज, मैनिक्योर, पेडिक्योर, केराटिन ट्रीटमेंट, क्रायो हेयर ट्रीटमेंट और बहुत कुछ जो आपके हुस्न को चार चांद लगा दे। तो देर किस बात की, अभी विजिट कीजिए ब्यूटी बार एंड ब्राइडल। वी आर लोकेटेड एट 5150 डिक्सी रोड, यूनिट 6, मिसिसागा। अवार्ड विनिंग इंडियन ब्यूटी सैलून। For appointments, call now 437-324-2885. Beauty Bar and Bridal, one stop beauty salon.
आओ चले ईद बाजार, चलो चले ईद बाजार। चूड़ियाँ, झुमके, जूते, पान लगाए, मेहंदी ले सामान, लेडीज जेंट्स कपड़े, सूट, शेरवानी और सैंडल बूट, सुर्खी पाउडर और सिंगार, फ्री एंट्री इस बाजार। चीज मयारी, सस्ते दाम, वहाँ की हर शे आए काम। आओ चले, चलो चले। Eid Bazaar, presented by Awaz Entertainment and PJ International at Swagat Banquet Hall on 26 and 27 June.
जी, हम आपको बताते चले समर फन फेस्ट। जी, समर फन फेस्ट एक मरतबा फिर वापस आ रहा है आपके लिए बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे लेके, जहां खाने पीने के स्टॉल हैं, शॉपिंग है, एंटरटेनमेंट है, बच्चों के लिए झूलों का और कार्निवल का बंदोबस्त भी गया है। यहाँ पे शाम को फायरवर्क भी होगा। आप आए और आके इसमें पुररौनक मेमोरीज को अपनी यादगार बनाइए, अपने खानदान, अपने रिश्तेदारों को, अपने छोटे बड़ों सबको बता दें। दोस्तों अहबाबों को मुलाकात कीजिए यहाँ पे 1 और 2 जुलाई, 1 और 2 जुलाई अपनी कैलेंडर में आप मार्क कर लीजिए। ईद और कनाडा डे एक साथ मनाएं। समर फन फेस्ट 1 और 2 जुलाई आइए, अपने और अपने घर वालों के साथ एंजॉय कीजिए।
मुसलमान होने के नाते हमें इस बात पे फख्र है कि हम हलाल तरीके से जिंदगी गुजार रहे हैं, लेकिन आपको इस बात का कैसे पता चलेगा? जिन हेल्थ सप्लीमेंट्स का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं वो हलाल हैं या नहीं। पेश करते हैं न्यूट्रलक्स। हमारे पास बेहतरीन क्वालिटी और रेंज ऑफ हेल्थ सप्लीमेंट्स मौजूद हैं जो कि हलाल सर्टिफाइड हैं और 100% वीगन हैं। बच्चों के लिए हमारे पास मजेदार गमी की शक्ल में विटामिन्स मौजूद हैं जो उनकी जरूरी गजाइयत को हासिल करना आसान और खुशगवार बनाते हैं। मर्दों के लिए हमारे सप्लीमेंट सेहतमंद और तंदुरुस्त रहने का आसान तरीका पेश करते हैं, चाहे आप एक एथलीट हो, बिजी प्रोफेशनल या पेरेंट। खवातीन के लिए हमारे सप्लीमेंट्स हैं जो आपकी मजमूई सेहत और तंदुरुस्ती में मदद करते हैं, चाहे आप अपनी एनर्जी को बढ़ाना चाहते हैं या अपने स्किन और बालों को सेहतमंद रखना चाहते हैं। और बुजुर्गों के लिए हमारे टैबलेट्स आपकी सेहत की खुसूसी जरूरियात को पूरा करने और आपकी उम्र के साथ साथ आपको एक्टिव और इंडिपेंडेंट रहने में एक अहम किरदार अदा करती है। न्यूट्रलक्स सप्लीमेंट्स जिंदगी के हर मरहले के लिए, ताकि आप अपने हलाल अख्तार पर कायम रह सकें।
HK Movers, home, offices, apartments and delivery, big or small, we move it all.
HK Movers.
Local and long distance, we also ship cars, Caler transport and moving services.
For service with a smile, give us a call.
Call Mr. Harminder 416-524-6704.
416 524 6704 पे.
Visit 140 Advanced Boulevard, Unit number 10, Brampton.
Long distance moving specialist.
HK Movers. HK Movers.
Welcome to EB Electronics. Please call 647-762-3956.
डिक्सी इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स और अप्लायंसेस पिछले 16 सालों से खरीदारों की खिदमत कर रहे हैं। हम लगातार 4 सालों से खरीदारों की पहली पसंद बने रहने का अवार्ड हासिल कर चुके हैं। हम किचनर्स, बॉश, वर्लपूल, एलजी, सैमसंग और जनरल इलेक्ट्रिक के ऑथराइज्ड डीलर हैं। 5 स्टार खिदमत का लुत्फ लें। हम आप सभी को टीवी सबसे ज्यादा रियायती दामों पर देने की गारंटी देते हैं। www.dixieelectronics.ca हमारी वेबसाइट पर जाएं या अभी कॉल करें 905-625-5900। सभी बहुत ही मुनासिब कीमत पर दस्तयाब हैं जो आप बाआसानी से ले सकते हैं। At Dixie, we sell quality and deliver confidence.
Zoc. Now it's fully renovated. Live catering, barbecue, tandoor, जलेबियाँ और fresh naan. तकरीब आपके घर में हो या घर से बाहर, Zoc is providing full service now, and Zoc has opened a new banquet hall, garden event center. आपका Zoc देखकर लोग कहेंगे क्या Zoc है आपका? Call right now 905-625-7786. Zoc वालों के लिए.
Good evening and welcome to Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz Entertainment in Canada around the world. My name is Tahir. I'm a fellow of Rules SU of Canada and broker of record for City Pro Realty Inc. brokerage. We're talking about challenges selling tenanted property. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, does the seller has the right to sell the property? Yes, it does. And before he puts the property on the market, he has to discuss his lease agreement with the realtor, or the consumer has to talk. It relates to possession of the property. If it is month to month and the purchaser wants to take possession of the property, they need to give 60 days notice. And you have to complete the requirement as defined in the Residential Tenancy Act and notify the tribunal board that these steps you have taken to comply with that. Most important thing is timing. You need to allow, under Residential Tenancy Act, allows the seller, broker, real estate broker or his authorized representative, his or her authorized representative, to visit the property by giving appropriate notice. So right now with automation, especially we're using Broker Bay, it's amazing that you can connect the seller, the tenant, and yourself, and all the cooperating brokers, everybody on Broker Bay, and they get email or text and confirmation. You can allow them, because when you are setting up a specific time, so under the Residential Tenancy Act, showing is between 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Normally, because when people are occupying, they're paying the rent. You want to make sure they can enjoy it. It doesn't affect the enjoyment of the property because they're still paying the rent. Therefore, you pick up a specific time frame, and that's the time frame that you will be booking the appointment. So working with that is very important. And when you're entering the rental unit, you have a 24-hour notice requirement under the law. So we have to do that. Then question is, when you are doing appraisal, does the landlord or the seller has to attend? No. Your realtor, who is representing on behalf of the seller or landlord, he or she has to go and attend to the appraiser because it allows that, the representative. And also, even similarly, the insurance or the appraisal person, broker, our cooperating broker agent, they all know that we use Broker Bay, and they set up process through that. Or you're doing a scheduling home inspection, you can always set up that, especially because it needs a longer time. So you have, the most important thing is termination of the lease or tenancy agreement. You can only terminate if you are on a month-to-month and the purchaser want to occupy the property for their personal use. And this is very critical. If there is no agreement, if there is an agreement that has 6 months left, the purchaser has to honor that commitment before they ask to take vacant possession of the property. So these are the things that you have to look at them, because purchaser want to use for their personal, and they have to use these forms, and they have to use the landlord and tenant tribunal interpretation guideline, number 12, to make sure they understand how it works. And everybody should read that. And as long as the purchaser is using it for their personal as a principal residence, you have no problem, depending on whether it's a month-to-month, or you have to honor the commitment if there is a remaining period. And this is why, if you want to assume the tenant, the buyer can assume the tenant. And this is very convenient way of selling it, provided that. The only thing I mentioned to you before, that people who have leased the property and they're living in the house, they are not paying market rent. But since they were already there and all these changes were happening in pandemic, they have advantage of what they have, a good lease, and law protects them because you can't move them out unless you are. Now, that's also another situation. If the landlord is living upstairs and the tenant is in the basement, if your entire house is given to one tenant, and it's a different story. You have to always consult with a lawyer to make sure your lease is reviewed and the terms are defined. And then if you need some guidance, you can go even visit the Residential Tenancy Board to find out more details if you want to learn. Or everything, you can Google it and learn it. Idea against is not to contravene the law, not only Residential Tenancy Act, but also REVA, because, or TRISA, soon to be TRISA, because some complaint can happen from the consumer if you have not cooperated or done a transaction in a way and violates these ethics and also contravention to the legislative act. So you have to be very, very careful when you're dealing with it. And I recommend that if you have to buy a property, best thing would be to sell your property if your property is tenanted before you buy it, because you're going to hold somebody else's property for a long period of time before your property is sold. Because if property access is available through your property that you want to buy, it'd be faster, you can negotiate. But your property that is to be sold, you may have to look at the value you're going to get, because some people will not buy your property because carrying costs will be much more than what the tenant is generating through their property. So it's very, very important, and especially under interest rate that's going up now. And it appears potential is that in July there may be another quarter point increase from Bank of Canada. So keep watching. Go to Bank of Canada, subscribe to their service, and keep watching the interest rate. So you must be aware. This is very, very important for you. You must work with a real estate professional. So subscribe to automated services. Lots of changes are happening. We are member of Mississauga Real Estate Board, which deals with ITSO. We are also member of Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. We have their own MLS system. So systems are changing. A new system is coming called Realm, and we are learning. So there is a lot of learning activities for realtors to deal with, not only listing the property, how to navigate, how to search properties, and how to send it to your client. There's a lot of learning to be done. So I recommend all real estate professional to take courses, go to TREB, take courses, go to Mississauga Board or ITSO, take these training courses. Is to help you to serve your client more efficiently, promptly, and competently. So thank you for watching Realty Coffee Talk on Awaz Entertainment. If you have any question, please visit realtycoffeetalk.com or subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can go to Awaz Entertainment Facebook, awazent.com. You can go to Awaz Entertainment on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you for watching. And give us your feedback about the program. If you have any questions, you want to ask questions, you can call 647-484-0018, Thursday, 7 p.m. on Awaz Entertainment in Canada, around the world. Thank you for watching Realty Coffee Talk. May God bless you all. May God bless Canada. Bye for now.